In today's episode, we discuss if being a stay at home parent is a privilege or a risk. We all know that there are benefits, pros, and cons to being a stay at home parent, but what happens when life happens and you are no longer financially sound? In this episode, we're unpacking the real cost of stepping away from your career and how to protect yourself if you do plan to do it.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money flow.
Hey, babe, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about being a stay at home parent and what that means for people financially.
Yeah, so we're kind of diving into the aspect of, is it a privilege? Is it a risk? Kind of all those things that are associated with making that decision for your family.
I think it's both. I think first you have to really think about who you are as a person. I knew very early on that even though we wanted to have children, I did not want to be a stay-at-home parent. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't have enjoyed staying home longer, having more of a maternity leave, having better, health benefits, all those things that, you get in other places besides the United States.
Yeah.
Um, but, you have a child, especially your first, and you're like underwater, you're sleep deprived. All you want is to like absorb this tiny little human and all their snuggles. And then, for some people, they go back within days, within 4 weeks, 6 weeks. You have not even come up for air and you're supposed to go back to work. That's insane.
Yeah, I think the issue is very much focused on being a US thing. Because as you stated, a lot of the other countries have a lot more support for parents once they have kids. And here in the United States, even though we have an administration that's talking so much about family first, they are gradually taking away the few things that we do have that do help parents when they first have kids. And
Hmm.
it's crazy to me because the thing is, we have friends in all different areas of the world, but then also we have friends in the United States that are stay-at-home parents. We have ones that like, I don't want to do it at all. So we, you know, see all the different aspects of how that works. And honestly,
And the pros and cons
yeah,
of it. Yeah.
I would say the majority of friends that we have where a parent chose to stay at home, it was always the woman.
Hmm.
We don't currently have any friends that are stay-at-home dads. Not to say that there aren't stay-at-home dads out there, but the ones that we do know, it was more or less from a career standpoint choice because they were all teachers.
Yeah. So at that point, you're just going to work to cover the daycare bill, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it has to make financial sense to either decide to stay at work or if that makes you happy. Like I'm a person, I love and adore my children, and I'm so grateful to be a parent. But also, that is not the only thing that I find fulfillment in. And I know I need something other than all the house chores and the dishes and the laundry and keeping a spotless house. And like that is, yes, it brings me joy because I want my family to be in a home that they are comfortable in and that's beautiful and welcoming and they're safe and calm space. But also, I need something else. And so there's that,
Societal pressure.
right, of, what makes a good parent? Oh, you are putting your kid in daycare at 6 weeks, you're a terrible person. There's so
I think it's
much.
what makes a good parent, what makes a good mother.
Yeah,
So
because we are the ones that carry the burden and the pressure.
there is no pressure for a dad to be a stay-at-home dad, even though in some financial situations it makes sense when the woman is the breadwinner and maybe the makes more sense for the father to stay at home.
Yeah.
But in those scenarios, I would say it's hard for the dad to do that because society looks at him as a negative, as if like he's
Mhm.
not a man because he's putting his family first and doing what is financially sound for his family, which is, crazy to me. But a lot of the pressure is on women. And in all honesty, is it a choice? Because I think it's a broken childcare system that leads to this choice. So it's not really a choice that like I said, personally, we don't know a lot of people that made this choice on their own. It was more or less like, hey, I make this amount of money, and the amount of money that I'm making in my job will turn around and it's going to pay all that money basically to childcare for our
Yeah,
child.
thousands of dollars a month.
So as a teacher, why would I do that if I'm already used to spending time with kids, obviously. That's why I chose that career. Why don't I do that for my kids and stay at home with my kids?
Yeah. Well, and I think too now there's another kind of added layer where people are choosing to homeschool because unfortunately school does not feel like a safe place, especially in the United States. So there's that added. I mean, I think about that.
Not even just a safe place, just not the
y-
education that we
There's
should expect in the United States.
yeah, I mean, I feel like we're talking about 17 different episodes in one episode right now. Let's bring it back because there's just so much. I think what you really have to decide is what kind of parent do you want to be? And what do your finances allow you to do? And one thing that I'm very firm on right now in this busy season of life is I work from home. Now, I do, I've started traveling internationally again, which I really enjoy, and that is a fulfilling part of my career. That's also something where, as our children get older and as our wealth and income increases, I want to take you guys with me. I mean, I've seen it at the companies that I've worked at where all these top executives, I mean, they're just flying all over and, hey, the hotel room's already booked. The yacht is already booked. The event is already booked. Bring your family. So there are those perks that I think about where as the kids get older, I want to bring Aston on business trips and then we go early, we stay late and we have our girl time and then I do it with Roman and obviously I would love for you to come along. And so those are things that I think about when I think about my career, but one thing that I'm not willing to sacrifice right now is I'm not going to sit in traffic for an hour, hour and a half commuting one way there, one way back, missing dinner time, etc. And so for me, I even though it feels stressful, I certainly don't want to glamorize it, but I am grateful that I can go from my office, which is right next to the kitchen to make our kids dinner, um, you know, every single night, and I'm home with them. And I do think that looking back at my childhood, my mom was home. She was there to make us our meals, and we sat around the table very traditionally back in the day and had dinner together as a family. And those are things that I do think are important and shape who we are, and it is a privilege to be able to do that.
And, in my scenario, my mother raised my brother and I. And so obviously she had to work and she had a career. She was a college professor.
And I think
So,
with you, she went back within days of having
yeah.
you, which is, like, insane.
Well, because at the time it was, and then from an insurance standpoint, my mom
Right.
ended up having to switch jobs to have insurance. And that was
Another societal flaw.
the whole reason behind all of that. So, but I'm
Yeah, but
open.
so she's a new mother. You popped out mere days ago, and now she's having to leave you. She's breastfeeding, she's doing all these things, and she's having to leave you for insurance. That is a societal problem. That is insane. Like your hormones do not regulate themselves and go back to their baseline level of where they're supposed to be until almost 2 years after you deliver, and you have women going back into the office within days of delivery. I mean, you're literally still wearing a diaper.
But once
It's
again,
insane.
it's a broken childcare system.
It's a
Is
broken
what
system.
often leads people
Healthcare, childcare.
making that choice as being a stay-at-home mom often in those
Yeah.
scenarios.
I feel
But
like I should have gotten my mind right a little bit more for this episode
man,
because I'm getting fired up over
you got a
here.
plan there. But and I also want to preface that we're not one way or the other because we are all for whatever works for your family.
Hmm.
You are the ones that need to make that decision what works for you. We made a decision what works for us, but by no means is this episode skewing one way or the other. However, we do want the conversation because there are some financial truths that do need to be discussed, and there also can be some proper planning that can happen before you have your family and make that decision that would actually make the outcome a lot easier for you.
Yes, because there is privilege and risk in staying home for either partner. So whoever decides to stay home, even if it's 6 months, a year, 3 years, until our kids go to, pre-K, whatever time frame you're putting on this, you are stepping away from the workforce. You will have a gap in your resume. I do think that there's a societal shift where, if you see a gap in a resume, I think people are more empowered to say, "Hey, I stepped away to raise my children," or "I had elderly parents that needed
Very
to."
new though.
That is very new, and people are, not everybody's comfortable having that conversation. However, people are feeling more empowered to be, you know, to prioritize their families and to say, "I stepped away to be with my family, whatever that might look like, or to take care of my health or whatever that might be. And but there is financial risk. I mean, if you think about um you're not contributing to your 401k at that time. You are, you're lacking an entirely separate income. So your savings is probably not where you want it to be. And I mean, life is already so expensive as it is right now. So if you are a one income household, think about how much income one person needs to generate in order to, I mean, just cover the basics, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking about, we're not talking about the dinners out and the vacations. We're talking basics. Now you've got diapers, formula, potential, you know, other children are expensive. So, I mean, there's just so many things that I could list right now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really hurting people is that obviously costs of things are increasing
Mhm.
and we're not necessarily seeing the increase in our pay. So having a two income household can be significantly more beneficial when it comes to taking care of all those expenses. Now, also, a two income household also helps with risk mitigation because in this day and age, and we've experienced ourselves, layoffs are real.
Yep.
And when you have two people working, if one person gets laid off, at least you still have some income coming in as compared if you're solely reliant upon one person's income if something happens to that.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, also the thing is, as you stated before, retirement savings, if you're not currently working, you don't have access to a 401k plan through an employer, match, anything of that nature. But then also there's the thing of Social Security, because Social Security is based off of your income that you've been making throughout the years leading up to when you take it.
Mhm.
So if you are currently not working, you're obviously not contributing to Social Security,
Yeah.
and that's going to lower the amount that you would be eligible for once you do become Social Security age.
Which sidebar, I think people our age, right? Millennial, zillennial. I mean, most of us, I think, have come to terms with the fact
Yeah.
that it is not going to be around. And let me just go on record to state I want to uncheck the box for Social Security coming out of my paycheck, every paycheck, because we know it's not going to be there. We're paying into a system that is paying out currently and is not going to be available probably within 10 years unless something drastically changes. And I'm kind of pissed about contributing to something that I'm not going to have access to. We can keep going.
Yeah, that could be a whole nother topic.
Yeah, we'll add it to the list of growing topics.
One thing that I've seen in people that I know that when you have a stay at home, I'm just going to say what it is. Normally, majority of the time, stay at home mom.
Mom.
You have a
Mhm.
stay at home mom and the husband is working. Sometimes you can see a power imbalance.
I wish you would, but I get it. I get it.
I've seen scenarios where
Hmm.
the man is the one working, the woman is staying home taking care of the kid, and she's working as well. Obviously, that's
The hardest job,
job, but she's not quote unquote bringing in an outside income. And
unpaid
seen
labor,
decisions made that I would consider to be a joint decision that needs to be discussed, where the man makes a decision without the wife.
like buying expensive things,
Yeah, like expensive things that they don't necessarily need. Like, so I've seen scenarios where the husband goes out and buys
luxury
a new
car.
luxury car without even having a conversation with his wife about it.
If you make decisions like that in your house, unless there's like, maybe in this is not that scenario, but if let's say, you had a prenup, maybe you did a postnup like we did, maybe there's a trust fund, maybe there was an inheritance, and now it's like, no, this is my money. This is not our communal
No,
money.
that's not what we're talking
Right.
about.
Then it's like that's different, right? Because like that's something that maybe you actually worked out and put some parameters around. That's typically not the case. But for somebody to feel so emboldened to be like, I make the money, I get to make the choices, and I can spend this money how I want, that is so disrespectful. I cannot even imagine being in a relationship where that thought would even cross my partner's mind. Like that blows my mind.
I mean, and also with that, that leads into what if you get divorced?
Right. Hello.
So if you have been so just say hypothetically, you've been a stay-at-home mom for 5 or 10 years, you have that gap in your resume. Maybe there was some power imbalance, so therefore you weren't necessarily part of the joint making of financial decisions, and now you guys got divorced.
And what are you
Are you
left with?
prepared to start over? What are you going to get? Are you going to get anything?
Yeah. I do think, and we have people in our circle who, maybe were nurses or accountants or, they were professionals in their own right before stepping away from their careers, and they have maintained their certifications and their licenses and their continuing education credits, not because they feel like their relationship or their marriage is at risk, but Because it's good to have for all the reasons that we've already talked about. You've gone to school, you've gotten your credentials, you might as well keep them up just in case. Like if you stepped away as a teacher and to raise your children, eventually your children will all be in school unless you're homeschooling. My thought was always, what do you do then?
Yeah.
Like if we were in a position where I didn't have to work and our children were of school age and I have, let's call it 6 to 8 hours a day to do what I want. I mean, yes, it's great to do charitable, work and be philanthropic and to give yourself 2 hours to exercise every day and then do your housework. And like, I mean, that sounds lovely. I mean, for me, that would be lovely for a period of time. But I mean, you have to think about like what happens once your kids are in school. Like, what do you plan on doing with your time? I think you need to think about that too. Will you plan to go back to work at that point? And what can you do to, kind of stay networking, keep your credentials up, make yourself a desirable candidate if and when that time comes?
Yeah. And, kind of with that being said, like we've discussed some of the hard truths that come with, having a stay at home parent, more specifically, a stay at home mom.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that you can potentially do if that's a decision that your family's going to make? I would say first and foremost is that having a conversation about it before it just happens.
Yes.
So first and foremost, like, hey,
What will this look like?
if we're thinking about having kids, hopefully in the scenario you're planning beforehand, do you want to be a stay-at-home mom? Does it make more sense financially? So
And how long?
yes,
How long do you think?
having that conversation. So, the first part of it is like I said, having the conversation and having a financial plan.
Yeah.
Because if you have two incomes and now you're going to be living off of one, have you sat down and looked at all the numbers and actually put together a plan that makes sense that will allow your family to have that stay at home parent while also making sure that they're able to cover all the expenses that are necessary?
I think there also needs to be like a plan A and a plan B because the reality is, especially with your first child, I mean, regardless of how many children, your hormones are doing a lot of things. And you might go into this scenario thinking, hey, I'm going to be good to go back to work 12 weeks, right? My maternity leave is 12 weeks. I'm good. And then you're like, oh my gosh, that came and went. I'm not ready to leave my baby. So then what do you do? Like, A, can you extend? And what does that mean for your finances?
Mhm.
So I feel like you need to have like a caveat of like, okay, we're going to plan for this, but then it's going to be this. Because even with our son Roman, who was born in October, in December, he ended up being hospitalized for RSV. And so he was in the hospital for a few days and I mean, he was a newborn. So I was terrified. I was like, I'm certainly not putting my child who just was hospitalized for a breathing condition into daycare, which is a cesspool and petri dish of germs. So, I thought, okay, we'll do 12 or 13 weeks. And it ended up being, 15, 16 weeks for him because I just was like, I cannot put him in daycare. He's too small. I just had these visions of like him being hooked up to all the tubes and the oxygen and all the things, and it was terrifying. And I was like, absolutely not. I cannot. I'm not going to work. I need to like sit here and watch him breathe every second of the day. And so things like that happen, and you have to be prepared for them, not only in, well, what's your job going to do? And are they going to say okay? Or what does it mean for your finances? Because at that point, I was over my maternity leave and I was just off of work.
Once again, like I think it really comes down to planning because
Yes.
one thing and knowing the details, not just a high level overview, you really do need to dive into the details because you need to make a plan from, the finance standpoint as far as how much money you're going to have off of one income, where's that going? But then also like, hey, maybe if I'm planning on being a stay at home mom, I don't quit my job beforehand.
Mm,
Let me go ahead if I have a good maternity leave, take advantage of that,
yeah.
whatever it may be, and then quit afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, your job may not like it, but like, let's be honest. If your job want to get rid of you, then they'll do what's in their best interest. So why not do what's in your best
Right.
interest?
Well, and there's a lot of benefits too. Obviously, if you're in that corporate life of some companies have really great benefits. So if you can take advantage of that, take advantage of that.
Also, it's talking through the logistics. So it's like, for example, if you're not going to, if the mom's not going to be bringing in an income anymore, how is that going to look from like her own, her own bank account? Is the, husband going to split his income, his salary that comes in, and give her a certain amount? What's that going to look like?
I know, but then it's like, don't you get into like the whole, oh, I'm getting an allowance, which if that's what you
That's
decide,
simply stating that you need to talk through it. I'm not saying how
right,
you do
right.
it, but you need to
You need to
talk through
talk
it
about it.
beforehand and make a decision.
Yeah, that
So,
makes
for
sense.
example, in my ideal scenario is that the salary comes into the joint account, things are paid from the joint account.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a discussion. What does it look like?
Yeah.
Know the numbers. I mean, there's so much. Basically, if you don't have a plan, it's all going to fall apart.
But also too is you have to have the conversation a lot of people don't have is that since the mom is not working, how is that going to look from a contributing to a retirement account? So a lot of
Yeah.
people are not aware of things called spousal IRAs. And what that's for is in an IRA, because honestly, a lot of people also don't realize that, for example, a lot of these types of accounts, like a 401k plan, you have to have through your employer often, and then an IRA, you have to have earned income in a given year to even just contribute to an IRA,
Mm,
traditional IRA
yeah, you
or
have to
55.
earn
You have to have
something.
earned income. So they have things called spousal IRAs that allow you to contribute to a stay-at-home spouse's IRA without them having to earn any income. So having a conversation about that and saying like, hey, we're going to set this up and we're going to contribute to this spousal IRA for the non-working spouse.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly would want, again, some sort. We're both products of divorce. So even though we are happily married, we still are planning for the worst case, and then you hope to never have to cross that bridge. But having seen my parents go through a divorce when I was in my late 20s, you do kind of always have that lingering thought of like, well, what if, right? Like, my mom thought she was going to be insured by TRICARE for the rest of her life, and now she works so that she gets health insurance, and she's miserable because she has to work for health insurance. I mean, like, I don't want to live that life, you know? So if I had decided to be a stay-at-home parent, I would have wanted all those protections
Post-nup and prenup.
in place to make sure that we are contributing, at the same savings rate into retirement accounts, that we both have life insurance. Like, all of those things are really important, not only for the protection of your family, but also for the protection of you, like,
Yeah.
you as an individual person, not you as a mom, not you as a working mom inside or out of the home, like, just you as a person.
Like you obviously you have best intentions when you get married to stay together forever. But half of marriages end in divorce. And I'm pretty
Mhm.
certain that majority of those people didn't imagine themselves getting divorced. So
Well,
therefore, you have to put things in place that just make sense. So like having a prenup or a postnup can be so beneficial in the event that you do divorce and you do have a stay-at-home parent that they are able to receive some type of financial compensation that
mhm.
allows them to quote unquote start over at a better place.
Yeah, I agree. I think having it also, I think, would give you peace of mind, because I can't imagine that the people, probably mostly women, who have chosen to stay at home don't sometimes have these thoughts of what would happen if,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's the what ifs of life, and those are unknown, and so having protection and plans in place, I think, is really important. And we know that statistically, in the event of a divorce, that women tend to lose more wealth in a divorce than men,
Oh yeah.
right? Men typically come out on top and the women get screwed. And so what can you do to not screw yourself?
Well, also too, like having a conversation about it doesn't be either or.
Right.
Because as you said before, especially if you're staying at home, a stay-at-home mom, your kids are starting to get older, so you do have a little bit more time during the day. Maybe there are some other things that you can do to start
Mhm.
bringing in some income, even though you're still maintaining, your stay-at-home parent duties. And
Right.
that can help out with independence, also help out just overall morale for yourself. Because like you said, um, obviously I don't know from a firsthand experience because I'm not a woman or a stay-at-home parent, but there is that identity thing where like you were stating, like, you stated that you never want to be a stay-at-home mom, only be a stay-at-home mom because you have other parts of your identity that you want to fulfill.
Yeah, I need like an outlet. I need to talk to adults. I need to just feel like I'm contributing to something that is not just my home.
And we've also we've heard that from other stay-at-home moms
Yep.
we know when we interviewed for the podcast
Mhm.
where it was this kind of like shift in identity where they were like am I just a mom? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's
Right.
feeling because obviously being a mom is a major thing. And I guess for myself, being a dad is a major part of who I am. But it's like, am I just that?
Right.
Or am I, I want to be something more than just that also.
Yeah. Well, and I'm somebody like I like a challenge. I need to like learn and grow in new things, and not saying that you can't do that as a stay-at-home parent, but I get a lot of that fulfillment through work. And that's not to say, I mean, a lot of this podcast is about becoming work optional and having time freedom. And, those are all things that we're working towards. But in general, I'm very happy working, especially now. Like I'm working from home, I'm not commuting. I have a very, I do a lot of creative things in my job, in my role. I have to think outside of the box a lot. And I have to problem solve. And so, yes, at the end of the day, there are days where I'm just exhausted and mentally completely drained, but I get a lot of fulfillment knowing that A, I can stand on my own 2 feet should something happen, but also eventually our children will not be school aged. Well, like, then what will happen? Like, what, I just, and listen, that could change. Maybe in 3 years I'll feel differently. But for now, and very early on when we started having the conversation of growing our family, I knew that I probably wasn't going to stay at home. Now, let me just say this. If we would have lived in Europe, for example, where it's like totally common to have a 1 year maternity leave with the possibility of extending to 3 years, no questions asked, you're still getting 60% of your income, you still have health insurance. Listen, I'm sure I would have felt differently
Yeah.
because
It's a strictly a US based take.
would I have loved to just take my kids to the park every day? And yeah, of course. But the reality in the US is that's not financially feasible for most people. And so I think the way that, we did it was great. And, I'm sure I would have changed a few things here or there if we could have. But overall, I think we had a plan and we talked about it. And I think that's what's most important.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're someone listening to this podcast and you didn't have to even think about any of these things as far as being a stay at home mom, congratulations. That's a privilege because that
That
means
is
that
a
you have
privilege.
one income that is substantial enough to carry the household with no issues. Now, I wouldn't say it doesn't carry risk because you still have that.
Yeah, hopefully you have those things in place. Yeah.
It's like I said, it's a privilege, but then it can also be, kind of a forced decision based upon your scenario.
Mhm.
The biggest thing we want you to take away from this episode is have the conversation beforehand. Have it before the kids here. Figure out one, which way you want to go. And
Mhm.
whichever way you go, have a conversation of what that's going to look like in actual practice.
Yeah. And put numbers behind it, right? If your partner that is the working partner is contributing 4% to their 401k because they get a 4% match, well, can you also get 4 or 8% into your spousal IRA or into
Just
your
going to interrupt you from a number standpoint. It's probably going to, because you have much lower contribution maximums to a spousal IRA than you do to a 401k plan. So it
Okay,
might
well, thank
not
you.
line up perfect.
Well, I'm just saying there are ways that you could even it out, right? Like
Yeah, 100%. Because you can also just contribute to a brokerage account, stuff of that nature.
right, exactly. Like, oh, you do 4%, I do 4%. There are ways to contribute to make it more even, to make sure that your future self is also being taken care of. So, there are no right or wrong answers. Whatever you all decide, everybody is an individual and you have to do what's right for you. But we encourage you to have the conversation, to run the numbers, preferably before you're sleep deprived and the baby is here. But there are ways that you, as a stay at home parent, can also be protected financially. And those are the things we want you to be aware of. Hopefully, this episode was fun and informative. Share it with a friend. As always, we are glad that you are here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo.